Developing tonight, the White House taking a growing amount of heat for new restrictions on the reporters charged with watching the White House. Joining me now, Ellison Barber of the Washington Free Beacon and Richard Fowler, host of The Richard Fowler Show. So a group of major news organizations and associations, including Fox, sent a letter to the White House challenging this policy which bans reporters and photographers from events they were always able to cover before. Richard, what do you make of it?
Well, I got to tell you, Megan, I think what we've seen from this White House is a White House that is extremely open to the public. Most events are televised on YouTube or live streamed, and because of that, there isn't necessarily a need for the traditional press to be there because the American people can just go to the website and tune in and get it firsthand.
Not these events. I mean, this is a group of news organizations saying, and I read from the letter, surely as if they were placing a hand over a journalist's camera lens, officials in this administration are blocking the public from having an independent view of important functions of the executive branch. Is it not true, Ellison?
No, I mean, I would disagree with what Richard said. It is a huge deal, and particularly when it comes to these pictures. Photojournalism is journalism. Each picture tells a story in its own right, and it is not sufficient to say the White House took these pictures and we put them out for you, because that's a controlled image. That's one angle of a story that's taken by someone who is paid to make the administration look good. It's just not a complete representation of the picture. It sort of is a similarity of if the White House staffer came up to a reporter and said, don't worry about coming to this event. I'm going to take notes for you, and I'll write it up. And then your paper can run it. That's essentially what they're doing with these pictures, and that wouldn't be acceptable in regular journalism, and it shouldn't be acceptable. It should not be an okay standard in photojournalism either.
Richard, what of that? I mean, if this were a Republican president who had promised unprecedented transparency, and he was doing what this president is doing, would you object?
Well, I would not object at all, because I think what this president is saying and I think what this White House is saying is that our photographer releases all the photos from all the events that happens at the White House, which shows the people at the events, the people in the meetings, and I don't think there's any distinction here.
Yeah, but let me take that with you. Okay, so let's say they're in some meeting and President Obama rolls his eyes at somebody in the meeting. You've got an independent news organization in there. They would photograph that. That would be newsworthy. It would be the president sending a message that maybe he wanted us to see, maybe he didn't. The White House photographer may have a different take and may release or not release such a photo. Don't you see the difference?
No, I hear that, Megan, but the White House photographer has more access than a regular journalist will have. For example, the White House photographer can go in the No, but wait a minute now. The White House photographer can go in the Situation Room, and no other journalist can go. No journalist, no photographer can go in the Situation Room. Josh Earnest raised that today at the White House, and Major Garrett, or our own Ed Henry, said to him, "That's an outlier. That Situation Room, no one's complaining about that." Ellison?
Yeah, I mean, I stand by that it's a huge problem, and I think there's a tendency for people to be like, oh, it's just photos. But like I said, they really are telling an important story, and for the reasons that you just gave. But there's also something to be said for this is propaganda, because this is disseminating a specific image that typically is going to put the president, regardless of their political affiliation, in a flattering light.
Is that why they're doing it? Why do you think they're doing that, Ellison? In your view, why are they doing it this way?
You know, I don't know, but I do think that it really is worrisome, because if you're controlling access for photojournalism, no matter whether it's a big or a small event, you're also controlling a flow of information, and that is the antithesis of a democracy. And this is something that people really should be worried about, because you don't know what else is going on.
But one second here. I think it's one thing. We'd be making one argument if the White House completely blacked out everything. There was no pictures, nothing at all, no readouts from the calls that the president takes or anything like that. There's one way you say, okay, this White House is limiting journalism and
it's getting more limited.
Access.
No one's claiming a complete blackout, but it's getting more limited. Now the groups want an immediate meeting with Jay Carney on how to restore access.
And
Panel,
it's a slippery
thank you. Gotta go. Thank you both so much.
I don't know about that.
Big news for the Pledge of Allegiance.